Liz Larson.
And I'm Bill McKenna.
And together, we created the Cognomovement system. And we'd like to welcome you to the New Life Perspectives radio show,
where we're going to be sharing with you tools, tips, and ideas that are going to change your life.
Hello in UK Health Radio Land. I'm Liz Larson, and I'm here with my friend,
Bill McKenna.
Hey, Bill McKenna. And we are the hosts behind the New Life Perspectives radio show. And we just happen to be the pair that created the Cognomovement system. And we are really excited today because we have a very, very special guest. And this time, Bill can introduce him.
Oh my gosh, you know, how great to have Richard Bartlett of Matrix Energetics. Many of you listening probably have heard that before. Probably most of this broad audience globally hasn't heard it, but for anybody that's in the healing arts energetically may have been exposed. But Richard is the founder of that, and we're just so happy to have him on and to hear how did he come here. What happened after his discoveries? And finally, at the end of this, stay tuned for the entire episode because Richard is going to give a technique at the end, a special gift for everybody in the audience, as we always do here on our show. So Richard, tell us, well, first of all, welcome, and tell us, how did you make this discovery? What were you doing?
Discovery. Oh my God. Well, okay. I got out of chiropractic school, my first medical school, because I've been to two, in 1987, moved to Montana. And in Montana, I failed the chiropractic exam there for a very funny reason. When I was in chiropractic school, there was no funding initially, so I had to throw newspapers in the early morning hours before I would go to school, and I injured my thumb. So when I injured my thumb, I had to change the way I would set up on the vertebrae, and so I developed that habit and was very good at it, but it wasn't correct. So when I went and got tested, I failed the exam because I set up the way I would normally do. So then I had to drive from Seattle to Montana every other weekend. So this is like a 13-hour drive, and if it's snowing, it's worse than that, and over mountain passes. So it's kind of like a Charles Lindbergh thing where you bungee cord yourself in, and you're flying over the Atlantic and try not to drop into the ocean. And then I would treat people all weekend there in Montana, then have to go back home. And usually on Monday morning, I had one or two tests that I had to I didn't really prepare for. I just had to take them. Thankfully, I did very well in school. But on one of those trips, it was snowing pretty hard over the mountain passes. I was delayed getting to my office in Livingston, Montana. And I got there just in time at 8 o'clock to start clients. So I spent a whole day exhausted working on clients. And then at the end of the day, this woman brought in her little girl who had a lazy eye. Now, this was a spiritual community with Elizabeth Clare Prophet. I was a doctor in that community. They knew me well, and so I had a reputation there. So they brought her to me. The doctor said, well, we'll just watch it, what doctors do. We'll just watch it, and, maybe we'll do surgery someday. Maybe we won't, kind of one of those, bait and switch sort of things. And they always do surgery at some point. So anyway, I was so tired. I started babbling about an old 50s Superman episode with George Reeves, the original Superman for me. I grew up in the 50s. I was born in 54. And so it was about a blind girl who wanted to fly around the world with Superman. She won a raffle, or basically won a prize for the best essay that her mother helped her write. And so then Clark comes out there to interview her with Lois. And then he finds out that she doesn't think Superman exists, which is a big surprise to him because he's kind of checking underneath his shirt and said, yep, the big S is there. I've got the cape on. I think I exist, which is one of those existential questions we must all face at some point. So anyway, I told the mother the story. And as I was telling the story, which is a really beautiful thing, it's a 30-minute little thing, but including cigarette commercials, doctors teaching you how to relax by smoking. And towards the end of that, there's a whole thing where Superman flies her around the world, but first he sees a piece of glass in her eye, and so he gets the surgeons, this is before lawsuits and lawyers and all that, gets a surgeon to let him guide with his x-ray vision the removal of the glass. She gets her eyesight back, they fly around the world, they come through the window in New York, and there's mom and dad together because they kind of split apart when the little girl became blind. There was a car accident. Okay, so I tell this story, and I'm like, I have no idea why I just told this story. I'm just completely exhausted. And all of a sudden I literally saw Superman standing there full color, hands on hips, that kind of smirk smile on his face. And I thought, oh boy. And one of the things I could do with the child is there's an intraoral cranial technique where you can go in like this, and you can lift up the sphenoids and the sphenobasalar, and that could help a lazy eye. Trouble is, I tried that on my son when he was sick, when he was little, and he bit me like a snapping turtle. So I'm going, no snapping turtles for this boy. And so, of course, I saw Superman. Now, the alternative was the man with the x-ray eyes. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. Ray Milland, he injects himself with something so he could see into people's bodies, but then he winds up ripping his eyes out because it's horrible what he's seeing. I didn't think that was a good reality, so my subconscious came up with Superman. So I literally saw Superman. His x-ray vision, which was yellow because you got to be able to see these things, went into the little girl, saw a blockage there deep inside her brain. That light hit it, broke it up, and she started blinking at me, and suddenly she could see perfectly. Her lazy eye was corrected instantly. Now, what the hell happened there? I don't know. Was it an angel? Was it a delusion? Who cares, right? So that was pretty wild ending of the day, and I finally went to sleep exhausted. Woke up the next day. Very first person that came, and again, a lot of these people knew me. He's sitting there with me in this little office, little area, little room, and my knee's touching his knee. And he goes, Doc, your knee's touching my knee. And I said, well, so, I mean, we weren't homophobic. It was like no big deal, right? He goes, Doc, the energy in your knee is moving my knee. And at that point, it's going to sound crazy, but that's okay. I'm crazy. I don't mind. Superman walks through the wall and says, can I help? And if you're a fan of Superman, the third movie, Superman they fight together. Clark Kent and Superman fight, and then they finally merge in one. Well, I said, sure, come on in, Clark. And he merged into me, and here we are. So that's how Maker's Energetic started. That's the truth, bizarre as it may be.
Wow.
And then after that moment, that same day, I started to realize something was different because I would touch people and vertebrae would move and things would realign and they were having all sorts of experiences. It got much wilder later because when I started investigating quantum physics, because I wanted a model to try and understand this. It's one thing if you can do it. It's another thing if you can actually teach it and you can teach observable results that people can duplicate. Those were my criteria as a scientist, which a doctor is, hopefully, if they're still thinking, which is rare. And so getting into the quantum physics, I went, well, okay, here's a model that we can use. And I came up with the idea because I was used to measuring, before and after, like an x-ray, or if you're palpating something, it's like, well, that's moving, but this isn't. Okay, so that gives me a reference. So if it starts moving after interacting with it, that's a post reference. So there's your 2-point. That's how the whole idea of the 2-point technique came out. It's simply a unit of measure. The thing about it is it's not what you're measuring before and after. It's what's happening in between in the probability states that you can't measure with the conscious mind. That has an infinitude of possibilities. Because if you take a line, this is right out of the physics, if you take a line and you cut it in half, and then you cut that in half, it goes on and on and on, and it never ends. You cut that line gazillion times, and you'll still have more that you could separate. So that's the idea of those probability realities. So what came about after a lot of reading with physics and playing around and seeing the results of things and finally being able to teach somebody else. The first person I tried to teach, Mark Dunn, my dear friend who was in my office with me, he was a naturopathic doctor. We both graduated from Bastyr University as naturopathic physicians in 2000. He stayed with me for 10 years, but he couldn't get, and this is where people have problems, he couldn't get that it was a consciousness-based technology, not something I was doing with my hands. Now, it's not an aura thing either, and it's not based upon classical standard physics model, because that doesn't work. If I were to work on you at a distance, which I can, I would have no appreciable effect and probably would die before I would have a physical effect on your photons or your electromagnetic energy. So it can't be that. It can't be electromagnetic spectrum. It has to be scalar or portion field, Russian physics, which is information-based. So you have something that starts here. Take this as point 1 and a 2 point. Starts here. The imprint of the information as consciousness is downloaded like an email to its recipient, and it unfolds there in the electromagnetic spectrum, and that's where the quote healing takes place. So different model entirely, goes against every model out there. It's not Reiki, it's not any of that. It's instantaneous. It's not based upon feeling or electromagnetism or any of that, or building up energy or channeling chi. I once had a Qigong master who swore what I was doing was chi. So I said, okay, get in your horse's ass stance. I like witticisms, right? So he gets in his horse stance and he says, okay, I'm ready. And I just went like this, and he went flying backwards and unconscious. And when he came back, he goes, that was not chi, which I knew that. And I had an argument with Bill Tiller, who wrote the pre-word for my preface for my first book. And we were sitting at the table at this event. He goes, well, it's chi-based. I went, no, it's not. But he doesn't like scalar or Tesla physics. It's not something he really resonates with. Although my other physicist friend, who just kind of passed on recently, and I can't remember his name right now, his face, Claude Swanson, Dr. Claude Swanson, MIT PhD in physics, Princeton, a degree in physics, 2 physics degrees. We had a nice little talk, a chat together, and he wound up with his head in his hands giggling. And he goes, I don't know, Richard, it could be, because when you go past the conceptual, when you can do something that's not based upon the models that are acceptable in physics paradigms, when you go outside of those rule sets, you're writing a whole different set of rules. Sri Aurobindo said it was more like suggestions than rules that the universe was based upon. And if I go with enlightened guy, snarky enlightened guy, Jed McKenna, he says, there is no universe, there is no you, and it's all illusory, it's all Maya. So ultimately, if you're functioning in a dreamscape, that's how miracles are possible. Anything's possible in a dream. I've seen crazy stuff that is impossible. And yet, if you see it and observe it happening, there must be a model for it being possible. Best model I can think of is reality is a dream. So there it is.
I have a question. So
yes, ma'am.
I've never heard it posed this way. So just for reference, I came in contact with you through your books.
Yeah.
And read them and had a hard time understanding them and had to reread them. And I really, really enjoyed the work. But I've never heard there be a difference between quantum physics and Tesla technology.
Oh, it's huge. In fact, the deep state, which there is one around the world, what Joseph P. Farrell calls a breakaway civilization, they're the ones flying around in UFOs and have free energy and levitation technology and instantaneous healing. That's not given to the peons. But you see, the physics model, the Einstein physics model, is wrong, and possibly deliberately so. I don't know if you know this or not, but Rockefeller's paid for him to be the clerk in the Warsaw office there. So he's a Rockefeller boy. So I'm thinking, and Tesla called Einstein a moron. So you figure that out. I'll go with Tesla. Guess what? Einstein's this big hero. You can put him up on statues all over the world. Nobody even talks about Tesla. Certainly don't talk about him in physics classes or anything like that.
So I want to hear more about that for sure, because this is very interesting. And I think it's new information for a lot of people. Let's take our break a minute early and come back so we can really dive in. So sure. UK Health Radio, take it away. And we're back. So we're diving into what is the difference between mainstream physics and Tesla or scalar are the 2 words that you use. So you're right. Most people really don't know Tesla's contribution to the things we do have now and the possibilities that were kind of squelched. So would you tie that together for us? What does that have to do with the kind of healing availability that you discovered?
Well, I suggest dropping the word healing altogether because it puts you in a box
Okay.
against disease or conditions or problems. And that's not useful because, again, that then divides you up where it's you're in this duality, which you're always in duality. All perception is based on duality. You can't have perception without contrast and compare. But the thing is, if you can transcend the limitations of a model, and healing is a limited model, you can, and so I tended to use the word transformation because transformation doesn't tell you what you're going to get or what to expect. And the beautiful thing about that is it goes against my medical doctor, which I'm a naturopathic physician. I'm a medical doctor in the states I'm licensed in. It goes against my expectations of what's possible. You see, it's much easier to teach a child something, and I've done it in many seminars. I've had 9-year-olds in the seminar who have understood the principles. And in fact, I saw one kid, he was holding his hand up in the air like this, and his father was crucified upside down against the wall. Because people would go, I mean, come on. In quantum physics, I couldn't find any reference for people going into spontaneous kundalini or yoga positions or qigong or going unconscious and hallucinating. That's just not in the literature anywhere. Okay. Now, there's the quantum mechanics model, which is it's mechanical. It's just like we've got these particles and they break down to this and that breaks down to this, and then reality breaks down and we don't know. That's pretty much what happens. And at that point, the consciousness guys, like Erwin Schrodinger, they come in, they say, it's mystical, it's God. When you peel away the surface of the science, God's looking at you, staring at you, or the abyss is staring at you underneath. So that's what some of them got to that were more honest. They said, there is no difference between, this is consciousness based, okay? The original two-slit experiment confounded everybody because they found there was a difference when they were filming the experiment where they had a slit and they had an electron gun and they had two possibilities, and depending upon which slit was open, and just go right through there. But if they gave it a choice, it interfered with itself and created interference patterns on the radiograph. Now, this was completely against expectation. However, if they rushed in there to see what was going on, it behaved just like your kids are not backing your car out the driveway because you're not looking. If you're looking, they're asleep in their beds. But no, they're outside and they're slowly backing the car up and heading for the rave, and that's how the physics behaves. It behaves according to perceptual expectations. But when you break those expectations and the limitations of the mind's ability to perceive a different model, that model then can come into prominence. Now, this is based a lot on concepts of Rupert Sheldrake, morphic fields, which you may or may not have heard of. Morphic fields are basically the machinery of the universe, and they are torsion fields, and that is scalar or torsion, Russian torsion physics. It's if you take a little grain of sand, you take a little idea, tiny little idea, you stick it in a pearl bed, okay? That's how you get a pearl. The sand irritates the lining of the oyster, and the oyster forms a milky substance around it. That's what happens with religion, politics, the Dallas Cowboys, here, music, healing, everything. It's all based upon morphogenesis or morphic fields. The more you put into something, the more potential you have for that to be drawn upon. Now that, again, is consciousness-based. It is not based upon a linear standard physics model. And quantum physics is a linear standard physics model until you dive down into the abyss, and then you've got those physicists that say, okay, we don't know what's going on, we're confused, it doesn't make sense, but this is the way it appears to be. Okay, so here's the problem. You start out with the body here, we call this healing, right? You start out with the body, but then you break the body down into systems, organs, parts, okay? Now you've got cells, then it goes to molecules, then it goes to atoms. Now you start to have a big problem with atoms because 99.99% is nothing. There's nothing there, okay? It's a grain of sand in a football field. So I don't even believe the electron exists, and I certainly don't believe in virtual particles. The electron could have been just an artifact in the observation process. How can you possibly know what you're observing when you're using the very thing you're observing it with? that seems like a double-blind problem, because if you're trying to take an electron microscope or something like that and observe an electron, you're observing an electron with an electron. You're bound to get some pretty screwy results. So what I came to is, you break that down further. You've got the muon, the gluon, the shame on you on, the Catholic or Jewish guilt particle, and further on down, okay? And guess what? They can smash these things, but they can't put them back together. That's a child with toys that really don't know how to play right. You know, they're just spoiled. You know, CERN, it's a spoiled, rotten thing. We're going to break stuff up and find God. No, you're not. You're going to keep breaking stuff up and find nothing, because there's nothing there to find. The more you subtract, minimize something, the smaller it gets, the more confusing it gets. Because when you get down to the photon, it can both be, according to math, it can be everywhere and nowhere at once. Now that's a problem, because those are the two things in mathematics that are not allowed: the number 0 and the number infinity. They're forbidden. And in fact, the results in quantum physics go against statistical math. So what they do, what Richard Feynman said, physicists, they cheat by renormalizing. They take this and they renormalize this so that they don't get 0 or infinity, so they don't get these answers that don't make sense, because nothing in the way the universe is constructed, ultimately, if you take it down to that level, makes any sense at all. It's all quantum foaming at the mouth.
So this is super interesting. And Bill and I were having this conversation just the other day. And, you know, we're talking about really what you're saying, what a person focuses on expands, what we focus on collectively expands. And we come up with an idea that we say is the truth. And maybe the issue is that we don't even know the question to ask. We're asking the wrong question. So for example, electricity. You've got, at some point on the planet, people who have no idea electricity exists. They don't know, but it does exist. It's there. They just don't know how to ask the right question. They don't know where to look. And then all of a sudden, somewhere, someone has the idea, and then boom, we all know about electricity and we use it, and it's a regular, everyday part of our life.
That would have been Tesla, by the way.
Yes. So it strikes me that what you're talking about is exactly this. We have an idea about how things happen and change, what our natural world is. Something else, or the truth of it, or something greater or something less, exists. We just don't know the right question to ask to discover it. So I'm going to ask you, what's the right question? What is the question we need to pose so that we can put this into something we can understand?
Why are things so weird?
I love it. Love it.
It's an open-ended question that can't be answered. Now, I like this question. Ramana Maharshi, one of the great sages who went through awakening or enlightenment, said, all you have to do is ask, who am I? It's a question that cannot be answered. And what ultimately happens in continually asking that question is it dissolves the questioner. And the only way to get at the actual truth is to chip away at everything that is a belief or opinion. Now, everything I said is falsifiable, may not be at all correct or true, and I don't care. Because it doesn't matter what you do. I could take a feather and I could spin it in a coffee cup and somebody's hip would adjust. I mean, once you realize the rules are made up, you just make them up as you go. I mean, that's a really powerful morphic field, because you transcend all the limitations of the previous models.
So at some point, you have the discovery, you have the experience, you're helping people change bodies, transform in some way.
More than bodies, careers, consciousness,
everything.
The way they thought about themselves, the way they saw the universe in relation to themselves.
Okay, so now you have to take this amazing discovery and package it in a way that you can actually show the next person. Mm-hmm. So what did you do? How did you bridge that gap where you could show someone, because they might not have Superman walk into their body?
They might in a seminar.
Yeah.
Yeah, people have had some pretty weird experiences. It's like a Grateful Dead concert and somebody spiked the punch.
Yeah.
Really. And Robin Williams is teaching on LSD. So the first thing you do is you set up a rule set that says whatever is given must be observable and reproducible. It's a simple thing. And then you say, okay, so given that initial idea, how do we observe and reproduce? So you have to give them parameters to observe from. Okay, so you give them every rule set is phony, basically, because it's just based upon our perceptions, our beliefs, and opinions. It's not ultimately true. It just happens to work in a given circumstance. Larger or smaller circumstances, depending on how large your box for reality is. The more you expand the quote parameters of your box, the more you can look into the abyss. It stares back at you and you go, I'm scared, but I'm interested, you know. I started out, having been a chiropractor, I literally started out, here I'll use my Batman doll, because I can work with people online with this. I mean, I can feel their bodies when I work. I could feel your right shoulder, for instance. I could feel what it's doing just by touching the shoulder here on the mat. So, okay. So if I were to touch, say here, and this is not moving, and then I touch another area that feels like it gets even more rigid, this is how we started out. It's fixed, hard, and non-moving. And then if we go between the spaces, I got this from the fourth Indiana Jones movie. Actually, they're from in between the spaces, right? Not from this universe. So you go in between the spaces. That's there you go. That's where things change, you see. And it's so easy that people would make it difficult by trying to put a bunch of rules around what they had to do, what they had to understand, what they had to let go of understanding in order to experience it. And the truth is, the brain and the mind has zero to do with it. If there is such a thing as a heart or a heart chakra or a heart center, to me, that's an alien place that has no thought, feeling, or opinion. It just is. It's the abyss. That is the place where miracles come from. That's the big bang of consciousness right there. And so if you go to that, you drop down. I gave them these rule sets. Yes, drop down. But guides, if there are such things, gave me this. Drop down, place intent, which I told them it means place it in the tent, you know. Place intent, because people get all stressed out trying to make something happen. Place it in the tent and leave it alone, you know, and let go. If you go to a pond and you're a kid and you pick up a rock, and we taught this in the seminar, you pick up any little shiny rock, something there, that one attracts my attention, pink and kind of sparkling, throw it in the pond. Okay, in order to do that, you have to calibrate the distance you want it to go. You have to calibrate where you want it to go. You have to know how far to pull back unconsciously, and you have to know, most importantly, when to let go. It is in the letting go that the miracle occurs, not in the holding on of trying to make something happen.
You know, I mean, this is something that Bill and I are teaching our practitioners every day. It's not about the answer. Not about the answer. So interesting.
Oh, you know, gosh, I got to tell the audience, you know, because they haven't, you know, they're listening to this somewhere around the globe, all over.
Individual.
Individual. You know, what this looks like. Many years ago, I went to one of the seminars for matrix energetics right here in San Diego, California. It was wonderful, but it was really interesting where literally when you entered into this state that Richard had taught you how to do, the other person, like, without you doing anything, they simply, their body became kind of like moving involuntarily as the energy adjusted in them, or whatever it was adjusting. They literally, everything from would just fall over, they would back bend, pass out. It was absolutely amazing. It was very, very different than all the other trainings that I had been to. And it wasn't just me who did it. It was everybody could do it. And not only that, I come away from this thing and I'm like, well, maybe you got the group kind of hypnosis effect, right? Or something. Well, I tried it out without telling people anything, right? I mean, these are people that are not, they're just average Joe Blow And I was like, they have a problem. And I went through and did the process. And sure enough, the exact same thing happened. Their whole body would just, and then the change would occur. So anyway, it was a really good lesson. And what is going on there is, in fact, real. And it is something that you can learn how to do. And I would call it basic training for being a human. I think everybody should know. No,
I don't know if I'm a human. I've been accused of other things, but my clairvoyant friend used to say that when I get tired, my alien parts started slipping and showing.
We've been accused of that too.
Yeah.
You're from UK Health Radio. And when we come back, Richard has generously offered to give you guys something that you can take away today and use. So UK Health Radio, take it away. And we're back. So what do you have that everybody could try on to have an example? Because it's a very heady idea to start with, but to experience it something different.
It's really so simple that a child literally has absolutely no problem learning it instantly. I had when I wrote these, I think it was the first book, I had a publicist who had a little child, and the book, I sent it to her to look at, the finished, copy, and it went through her machine, and she said that alien symbols appeared on her machine, or her fax machine, when it went through. So I don't know what that's about. And then this is very funny. She put her, and I said, you shouldn't have told me this. She put her baby on the manuscript to change his diaper. Well, something happened. There was a transfer, because after that, the child was lining its dolls up against the wall and then two-pointing them, and they were falling over. I mean, and then I had another child, a little child, who went to, I don't even think she went to the seminar. I think she went to a little 2-hour event. Anyway, she accidentally knocked her grandmother over touching her leg, after she came back from this little event that her mama brought her to because she didn't have a babysitter. Okay, so relinquish the idea that there's anything to do here or there's anything that has to happen. There is a morphic field of this, like the Starship Enterprise, with fully loaded photon torpedoes and photon banks, and it's set to go. So drop down. Now, people think they're in their heads. There's no such thing. You don't have a head. Let go of that. You can't even prove it. You can't see it unless you're looking in the mirror. You can see maybe a little bit of your nose. I can see the edges of my hair. But head? No, I don't know. So let go of that. Drop it down. I don't know if you've ever seen the Pearl commercial where you have the pearl and you drop it down through the liquid and it slowly sinks down. Let it sink down to say here, and then just let that go. Now, you can use your hands as psychic sensors if you will, but what I want you to notice is the difference between air, nothingness, and something, okay? Now, we're not telling you what that something is. It's just, this is different than that, okay? Now, you may not think you can do that, but I guarantee you can. It's very simple. There's this. Now, I'm going to give you a little shot of infinity here. Let's call it that, okay? Because 0 and infinity, right? Forbidden. So we're going to do something forbidden here. We're going to go to infinity, and we're going to just move here, here, there, and then now. And this could be hypnosis, but if I was an alien, I don't know, alien hypnosis it may be. But now you'll be able to do it because there's nothing to learn that you don't already know from deep within yourself, because these truths are immutable and always with you and always have been. All I did was look at the physics, make some logical ideas, and came up with a basic disassembling of beliefs. Just let go of what you think it has to do or be to be hard. Let go of the idea you have to tingle or see pretty colors or maybe fall over backwards or spin in a circle. Who cares? Maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. It does happen a lot, but that's not important. What's important is the ability to transform consciousness, and that's just as simple as, like, if you're wearing sunglasses, lifting your sunglasses up, putting them back on. Very, very simple. You can do that a number of times. The more you do it, the more you drop into your heart. And now, just take this one finger right here, this one, kind of like ET, you know? Ow. Take that one finger, and we're, yeah, and we're just going to pick a spot, pick any spot in your body or pick a spot in your universe. I don't care. Pick your job, pick on your job. Don't pick on your wife or your spouse. But just move to that area in awareness and then let go. Just like I told you, throwing the pebble into the pond and watching the ripples. You know, once you watch the ripples are quantum ripples. They go out into the universe and beyond the universe forever. So there's this enfolding effect that continually amplifies. Allow that amplification to continue in your life from this point on.
Mm-hmm. So if we could, for the audience, one more time and just walk through the process one more time with that in mind.
Well, they've got it. You might have missed it because you were in trance, but that's okay. When I speak in video, where there's audio, it always comes out transcribed for audio. In fact, if you were to transcribe this, which I'm going to do, if you will give me the tape, it'll probably wind up in my third book. Anyway, dropping down from the idea that you have a head, which you don't, into down the chest, into the area of the heart, and just let that go like a beacon. It's shining out in 360 degrees at all angles simultaneously. It's not something your conscious mind can track, but your unconscious mind and your right brain can track, say, 1 million bits of information a second. You can track maybe 32 bits now, I think, with the modern DAWs. 32 bits with your conscious mind. Million. Let's go with 1 million bits. So now, in that parallel universe of possibilities, all you do is be aware that there's a starting point and there's an end point, but in between that, there's an infinity of possibility. Do not try to change something specifically in order to get rid of a problem. Allow yourself to play with the potential of what can occur, and you'll be shocked at how much more that will bring for you.
This is an amazing thing. And I would recommend for anybody who is hearing this and feels like this is for them or they're interested to get the first book is Matrix Energetics, correct?
No, I like the second one better, The Physics of Miracles, but I knew more and I was more, I don't know, more me when I wrote it.
Okay, so either or one of these books and be open to the possibility of what's available. I think when we're talking about a modality like this, you have to be open to what's available, what's possible outside of what you think you know. You really have to be willing to suspend what you think you know for a bit to be able to expand your awareness out. But I can say for myself, when I just learned it through the books, I didn't go to a seminar. I got a very specific feeling. And as you're talking again, Richard, I experienced that again. There's a very specific sensation for me that comes with it. So I don't know, do other people tend to experience it as a sensation as well?
Well, first thing, you don't have to know anything, believe anything, or accept anything, or prepare for anything. I had a sheriff in the audience with me one day, and he had his arms crossed like this. Obviously, wasn't swallowing my level of BS, and so I brought him on stage because that's what I do with people like that. And so he said he was an officer of the law, and he said I was looking pretty suspicious to him, and I'm sure I was, and we were already having fun. We were in rapport. And so he said, so I said, well, if there's something I could do for you, what that might be? And he said, knees. He pointed to his knees, and I went, because I'm a clown, I said, kneel before Zod. And he hit the ground on his knees. And he goes, what the hell? And I said, exactly. And I said, now, notice when you get up, they don't hurt anymore. And he got up, he goes, what did you do? I said, oh, a little bit of nothing and maybe a little bit of something. And he came for the whole seminar. At the end of the seminar, I was telling a story how I woke up late, going to go to Canada for the first time or going to Ontario, missed my limo that was supposed to pick me up, had to drive in my Firebird at over 100 miles an hour. I was dowsing for where the police were so that I could, avoid them because I could do that. And I said, and nobody could find me. And he stood up in the audience and he goes, I could. Richard. And everybody just cracked up. It's about having fun and letting go of what you think things are supposed to be or what you think you know, because you don't know anything. And I know even less than you do. So and I'm better at knowing less all the time, because the less I know, the more empty I am, and the more I can be filled with whatever the heck's out there to fill me.
It's true. The less you know for sure, the less attached you are to ideas and beliefs. I had a very dear friend tell me once, it's about the knowing. You have to know. And I thought, and she's a powerful teacher herself. And I said to her, actually, not for me. It's about the question. If I ever run out of questions, I'm done. That's it. I leave that day, leave the planet that day, because the question to me is the most fascinating. But the idea of not being attached or not knowing anything can be really scary, because it's how we believe we see the world. So in my opinion, my humble opinion, if I get one, it is kind of a consciousness level. It's kind of that place where you're willing to let it all be, maybe just a big mystery. Maybe you don't know for sure.
Well, I found out that the more I surrendered, the more powerful everything became. And this came to a head. I'll tell this story quickly. Came to a head in Germany. I was in Germany for probably the second or third time with my teaching partner, Melissa. There was a huge audience there, about 450 people. And there was a lady in a wheelchair off to the left side in the front row. And I was like, okay, no way am I bringing her on stage. That's not happening, right? So I picked a beautiful woman I'm a guy, I'm sorry, I picked somebody that I wanted to play with, brought her up on stage, and I said, what can I do for her? And she says, well, actually nothing but my friend. And I went, oh, Jack Nicholson sat up, and yeah, sure enough, brought the lady on stage in the wheelchair. She'd been told by the doctors that she was going to be paralyzed and would not be able to speak, and pretty soon wouldn't be able to move. And her husband was very German, as were the doctors. And they're like, it's all about the rules. So you're going to not move and you're not going to speak. Brought her on stage, and I knew I couldn't do anything. And everybody was watching me. And I went, okay, I quit. I surrender. I don't know. And I dropped down. I closed my eyes. I dropped down somewhere here. And then I dropped out of the bottom, probably into a bottomless chasm of consciousness. And I felt myself sinking. And all of a sudden I hit something that felt like something had changed. I didn't know what. And then the lady, she opens her mouth. She says, given what just happened, I think everyone's beliefs are nonsense. And then she stood up. And people were just like freaking out. And then we helped her walk off the stage. And then her husband, he was looking at the wheelchair and then glaring at me and then looking back at the wheelchair. And I told my translator, I'm not going to use the language I actually used, because I said, oh, no, you don't. You translate what I say. And I jumped off the stage and I said, Hulk smash wheelchair. And I jumped on top of the wheelchair, knocked it over, jumped on top and said, Hulk smash. And I growled at the husband like I was the Hulk, making a point. Don't you dare put your consciousness back on this lady. Well, I knew it would happen anyway. She leaves. This is wonderful. 2 weeks later, we get this report. She's in the hospital, can't move. She's completely paralyzed. And the German practitioners who were there asked us, well, is there anything we could do? And I said, no. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing you can do. And then what happened, which was the most beautiful, grace-filled thing, she got a letter from her daughter who was going to get married in Hawaii. And she's laying there in bed, paralyzed, with everybody's beliefs on top of her, and said, I really want to go to my daughter's wedding. She pulled out her tube. She got up. She got out. They put her in a wheelchair to get her out, but she got out of there. She's walking and talking fine to this day.
Wow.
So there it is.
Wow. Incredible. So you told us off camera that there is something coming up August 20th where people might get to have an experience with you. So at volume 2, Matrix Energetics, tell us about that.
Well, for the longest time, I'm very concerned about the teachability and the observability of a phenomenon, if you want to call it that. So I wouldn't teach online Matrix Energetics. I believe it had to be taught, in a seminar setting with people. I did recently do it because of the pandemic and all the other pandemic, I like to call it, all the other stuff. So, and it went really well. And there were about 80 people on it, which was nice. And so I'm teaching a volume 2, which you don't have to attend volume 1, although you can buy it. Starting on August 20th, it's going to be divided over 5 days, 2 hours each day. And I think it goes over 2 weeks or something. I don't remember. Anyway, it's a chance to hang tight or hang loose with me and surf the internet of consciousness together. And I think it'll be life transforming if it falls out to you. I'll tell you one more cute little story that's kind of amazing. Seattle, it rains all the time. So I was teaching in a 2-hour presentation in Seattle, and all sorts of wild stuff was happening, often did when I do these things. But this guy comes in the back door, kind of looking dazed. And he was a taxi driver that just happened to hear a replay of an interview I did on the radio. And he drove without knowing where he was going right to the event and said, I don't know why I'm here, but I need to be here. So there you go. Maybe you don't know why, but maybe you need to be there, maybe not. We'll look forward to it.
Okay. And so people can find that at i-hrt.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's the letter I-hrt.com. Can people find your books there as well?
You can go to Amazon and find my books. I mean, you can get them on Kindle for very, very little amount of money. You can even get them on the internet for free, unfortunately. There's also a couple of CD sets, which are kind of cool. The Matrix Energetics Experience that Sounds True did, and also the Guides Grace of the Field of Heart that Melissa and I did, also at Sounds True. Those are also available through Amazon. And I don't get any kickback on any of that, but you might enjoy them. I actually read my own book and thought, who wrote this? I was amused, So there it is.
So this has been a lot of fun. Any last thoughts, Bill McKenna, before we have to close for today?
Oh, gosh. Thanks, Richard, so much for coming on. It was a blast. And thank you for giving your time and energy to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, really, we want to thank you for everything you've done for the planet. Anybody, Bill and I are so passionate about people coming forward who are willing to serve in any way that they can. And so we know that this will go out and will touch some people who are ready to do what you do and serve in that way as well. So we're just thankful and appreciative for everyone like you who's willing to do the work you do. All right, UK Health Radio Land, stay safe out there, and we will see you guys all again next week. Thanks for being here with us on the New Life Perspective radio show. For more information or to find out more about the work that Bill and I do, please visit us at cognomovement.com or email us at info@cognomovement.com. See you again soon.